Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today we will read Harry Potter and the Prison of Azkaban. It's a good book and J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling. I don't know what J.K. means, but it's written. So now, as a fact about J.K. Rowling, and this book is of how many pages? Let's check. 461. Okay, let's start reading. Harry Potter and the Prison of Azkaban. Here are the chapters. First one is Owlpost. Chapter 2 is Aunt Marriage's Big Mistake. Third, The Night Bus. Fourth, The Leaky Cauldron. Chapter 5, The Den Mutter. Chapter 6, Salons and Tea Leaves. Chapter 7, The Burgart, The Wardrobe. Chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady. Chapter 9, Grim Defeat. Chapter 10, The Commander's Map. Chapter 11, The Firebolts. Page numbers. Outpost 1. Chapter 2, 17. Chapter 3, 33. Chapter 4, 52. Chapter 5, 73. Chapter 6, 101. Chapter 7, 129. Chapter 8, 147. Chapter 9. Chapter 8, 148. Chapter 9, 170. Chapter 10, 193. Chapter 11, 223. And so on. Let's start. Chapter 1, Outpost. Harry Potter was a highly unusual boy in many ways. For one thing, he hated the summer holidays more than any other time of the year. For another, he really wanted to do his homework, but was forced to do it in secret, in the dead of night. And he also happened to be a wizard. It was nearly midnight, and he was lying on his front in bed, the blankets drawn right over his head like a tent, a torch in one hand and a large leather-bound book, A History of Magic by Brother Bagshot, propped open against the pillow. Harry moved the tip of his eagle feather quill down the page, frowning as he looked for something that would help him write in his essay, which, burning in the 14th century, was completely pointless. Discuss. The quill paused at the top of likely-looking paragraph. Harry pushed his round glasses up his nose, moved his torch closer to the book, and read. Non-magic people, most commonly known as muggles, were partially afraid of magic in medieval times, but not very good at recognizing it. On the rare occasion that they did catch a real witch or wizard, burning had no effect whatsoever. The witch or wizard would perform a basic flame freezing charm and then pretend to shriek with pain while enjoying a gentle trick sensation. Indeed, Gwendolen the Weird enjoying being burnt so much that she allowed herself to be caught no fewer than 47 times in various disguises. Harry put his quill in between his teeth and reached underneath his pillow for an ink bottle and a roll of parchment. Slowly and very carefully, he unscrewed the ink bottle, dipped his quill into it, and began to write, pausing every now and then to listen. But if any of the Durclers heard the scratching of his quill on the way to the bathroom, he'd probably find himself looked in the cupboard under the stairs for the rest of the summer. The Dursleys family of number 4 Private Drive was the reason that Harry had never enjoyed the summer holidays. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Fretia, and their son, Dudley, were Harry's only living relatives. They were muggles, and they had only very medieval attitude towards magic. Harry's dead parents, who had been a witch and wizard themselves, were never mentioned under the Dudley's roof. For years, Aunt Pentua and Uncle Vernon had hoped that if they kept Harry as a downtrodden as possible, they would be able to squash magic out of him. To their fury, they had been unsuccessful, and now lived in terror of anyone finding out that Harry had spent most of the last 2 years at Hogwarts School of Witchery and Wizardry. The most Dudleyers could these days would look away Harry's spellbooks, wind, call, cauldron, and broomstick at the start of the summer holidays and forbid him to talk to the neighbors. This separation from his spellbooks had been a real problem for Harry because his teachers at Hogwarts had given him a lot of holiday work. One of the essays, particularly nasty about the Shingen potions, was for Harry's least favorite teacher, Professor Snap, who would be delighted to have an excuse to give Harry a detention for a month. Harry had therefore seized his chance in the first week of the holidays, while Uncle Vernon, Aunt Petunia, and Dudley had gone out in the front garden to admire Uncle Vernon's new company car in very loud voices. so that the rest of the street would notice it too. Harry had crept downstairs, picked the lock on the cupboard under the stairs, grabbed some of his books, and hidden them in his bedroom. As long as he didn't leave spots of ink on the sheets, the Dursleys never knew that he was studying magic by night. Harry was keen to avoid trouble when his aunt and uncle at the moment, as they were already in bad mood with him, or because he had received a telephone call from a fellow wizard one week into the school holidays. Ron Weasley, who was one of Harry's best friends at Hogwarts, came for a whole family of wizards. This meant that he knew a lot of things. Harry didn't, but he had never used a telephone before. Most unlikely, it had been Uncle Vernon who had answered the call. Vernon Dursley speaking. Harry, who happened to be at the room at the time, froze as he heard Ron's voice answer. Hello, hello, can you hear me? I want to talk to Harry Potter. Ron was yelling so loudly that Uncle Vernon jumped and held the receiver foot away from his ear, staring at it with an expression of mingled fury and alarm. Who is this? He roared in the direction of the mouthpiece. Who are you? Ron Weasley! Ron blew back, as though Uncle Vernon were speaking from opposite ends of a football pitch. I'm a friend of Harry Potter's from school. Uncle Verron's small eyes swerved around to Harry, who was rooted to the spot. There is no Harry Potter here, he roared, now holding the receiver at arm's length, as though as frightened it might explode. I don't know what school you're talking about. Never contact me again, and you don't come near my family. And he threw the receiver back onto the telephone, as if dropping a poisonous spider. The roll that had flowed had been one of the worst ever. How dare you give me this number to people like you? Uncle Vernon had roared, spraying Harry with the spit. Ron obviously realized that he'd gone to Harry into trouble because he hadn't called again. Harry's other best friend from Hogwarts, Harry Ganger, hadn't been in touch either, which was a pity because Hermione, the cleverest witch in Harry's year, had Muggle parents, knew perfectly well how to use a telephone, and would probably have had enough sense to not say that she went to Hogwarts. So Harry had no word from any of his wizarding. So paused. While I was reading, there was something that paused me because you can see I read had 2 times. I think this was a mistake, but it was written so Harry had no word from any of his wizarding. I think if you are watching J.K. Rowling, then you can please fix this on your book. Please fix this on your book, because or you can tell me the reason why you have written had two times. I don't know why that's the reason. Let's keep reading. Okay. So Harry had no word from any of his wizarding friends for 5 long weeks, and this summer was turning out to be almost bad as the last one. There was just one very small improvement. After swearing that he wouldn't use her to send letters to any of her friends, Harry had been allowed to let his owl Hedwig out at night. Uncle Vernon had given it because of the racket Hedwig made if she was locked in her cage all the time. Harry finished writing about Willardin and the weird and paused to listen again. The silence in the dark house was broken only by the distant grunting snores of his enormous cousin, Dudley. It must be very late. Harry's eyes were itching with tiredness. Perhaps he'd finish this essay tomorrow night. He replaced the top of the ink bottle, pulled an old pillowcase from under his bed, put the torch, a history of magic, his essay, quill and ink inside it, got out of bed and hid. Hid the lot under a loose floorboard under his bed. Then he stood up, stretched and checked the time on his luminous alarm clock on his bedside table. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Harry's stomach gave a funny jolt. Funny jolt. He had been 13 years old without realizing it for an whole hour. Yet another usual thing about Harry's was how he looked forward to his birthdays. He had never received a birthday card in his life. The Dursleys had completely ignored his birthday, his last two birthdays, and he had no reason to suppose they would remember this one. Harry walked across the dark room, past Hedwig's large empty cage, to open the window. He leaned on the sill, the cool night air pleasant on his face after a long time under the blankets. Hedwig had been absent for 2 nights now. Harry wasn't worried about her. She'd be gone this long before, but he hoped she'd be back soon. She was the only living creature in this house who didn't flinch at the sight of him. Harry, though still rather small, sleeky of his age, had grown a few inches over the last year. His jet black hair, however, was just as his always had been, stubbornly, untidily. Whatever he did to it, the eyes behind his glasses were bright green, and on his forehead, clearly visible through his hair, was a thin scar shaped like a bolt of lightning. Of all the unusual things about Harry, this scar was the most extraordinary of all. It was not as the Dudleys had pretended for 10 years. A scovelerner of the car crash that had killed Harry's parents because Lily and James Potter had not died in the car crash. They had been murdered by the most feared dark wizard for 100 years, Lord Voldemort. Here, Harry had escaped from the same attack with nothing more than a scar on his forehead. With Voldemort's curse, instead of killing him, he had reborn up in his organer, buried alive. Voldemort had fled. But Harry had come face to face with him since at Hogwarts, remembering that the last meeting as he stood at the dark window. Harry had to admit he was lucky even to have reached his 13th birthday. He scanned the starry sky for a sign of Hedwig, perhaps soaring back to him with a dead mouse dangling from his beak. Expecting praise, gazing absently over the rooftops. It was a few seconds before Harry realized what he was seeing. Silhouetted against the golden moon and growling larger even moment, the voice break, was a large, strangely loop-sided creature, and it was flapping in Harry's direction. Oh my God. He stood quite still, watching it sink lower and lower. For a split second, he hesitated on his hand on the window latch, wondering whether to slam it shut. But then the burly creature soared over one of the street lamps of Brevet Drive, and Harry, realizing what it was, leapt aside. Through the window soared the three owls, two of them holding up the third, which appears to be unconscious. They landed with a soft flump on Harry's bed, and the middle owl was large and grey, keeled right over and lay motionless. There was a large package tied to his legs. His name was Errol, and he belonged to the Weasley family. Harry dashed to the bed at once, untied the cords around Errol's legs, took off the parasol and then carried Errol to Hedwig's cage. Errol opened one blurry eye, gave a feeble hoot of thanks, and began to gulp some water. Harry turned back to the remaining owls. One of them was the large, snowy female, was his own Hedwig. She too was carrying herself a parcel and looked extremely pleased with herself. She gave Harry an affectionate nip with her beak as he removed her burden, then flew across the room to join Errol. Harry didn't recognize the third owl, a handsome, tawny one, but he knew at where it had come from because, in addition to the third parcel, it was carrying a letter bearing to the Hogwarts crest. When Harry relieved this owl of his post ruffles, its feathers importantly stretched its wings and took off through the window into the night. Harry sat down on his bed, grabbed Errol's package, ripped off the brown paper, and discovered a present wrapped in gold. And his first ever birthday card. Fingers trembling slightly, he opened the envelope. 2 pieces of paper fell out, and a letter and a newspaper cutting. The cutting had clearly come out of the wizarding newspaper, the Daily Probet, because the people in the black and white picture were moving. Harry picked up the cutting, smoothed it out, and read, "Misentry of magic employee, scoops of grand prize." Arthur Weasley, head of the Ministry of the Muggle office at the Ministry of Magic, had won the annual Dairy Project Grand Prize Golden Draw. A delighted Mr. Weasley told the Dairy Probet, "We will be spending the gold on a summer holiday in Egypt, where our eldest son, Bill, works as a curse of breaker for his cousin Weathering Bank. The Weasley family will be spending a month in Egypt, returning for the start of a new school year at Hogwarts, which 5 of Weasley the children currently attend." Harry scanned the moving photograph, and a grin spread across his face as he saw all 9 of Weasleys waving fiercely at him. Standing in front of a large pyramid, plump little Mr. Weasley, tall balding Mr. Weasley, 6 sons and 1 daughter. Although the black and white picture didn't show it. With flowing red hair, right in the middle of the picture was Ron, tall and giggling, with his pet rat, Scrabblers, on his shoulder, and his arm around his little sister, Ginny. Harry couldn't think of anyone who deserved to win a large pile of gold more than the Weasleys, who were very nice and extremely poor. He picked up Ron's letter and unfolded it. "Dear Harry, happy birthday! Look, I'm really sorry about the telephone call. I hope the muggles didn't give you a hard time. Uh, I asked Dad, and he recognizes I shouldn't have shouted. It's a it's brilliant here in Egypt. Bill's taken us around all the tombs, and you wouldn't believe the curses that the Egyptian wizards put on them. Mom wouldn't let Ginny come inside the last one. There were all these wooden skeletons in there of muggles who had been broken and grown extra heads and stuff. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when Dad won the daily profit draw 700 gallons. Most of it is gone on this holiday, but they are going to buy me a new one for the next year. Harry remembered only two in the occasion when Ron's only old wand had snapped. It happened when the car of the two had them flying to Hogwarts and crashed into a tree at the school grounds. Well, we'd be back about a week before then the term starts, and we'll be going up to London to get my wand and our new books. Any chance of meeting you there? Don't let the muggles get you down. Try and come to London, Ron. Try and come to London, Ron. P.S. Percy's head boy. He got the letter last week. Harry glanced back at the photograph. Percy, who was in his seventh and final year at Hogwarts, was looking passionately smug. He had pinned his head boy badge to the fez Persian genuinity on top of his neat hair. His horn rimmed glasses fashioning in the Egyptian sun. Harry now turned to his present and unwrapped it. Inside there was what looked like a miniature glass spinning top. There was another note from Ron beneath it. Harry, this is a pocket sneak scope. If there is someone untrustworthy around, it is supposed to light up and spin. Bill says it's a rubbish sold for wizard tourists and isn't reliable because it kept lighting up at dinner last night. But he didn't realize Fred and George had put beetles in his soup. Beetles in his soup by Ron. Harry put the pocket sneak scope on his bedside table, where it stood quite still, balanced on its point, reflecting the luminescent head of his clock. He looked at it happily for a few seconds, then picked up the parcel Hedwig had brought. Inside this too, there was a wrapped present and a card and a letter, this time from Hannibal. Dear Harry, Ron wrote to me and told me about his phone call to your Uncle Vernon. I do hope you're all right. I am on a holiday in France at the moment, and I didn't know how I was going to send this to you. What if they'd open at it customs, but then Hedwig turned up. I think she wanted to make sure you got something for your birthday for a charge or a change. I brought your present by all owl order. There was an advertisement in the Daily Prophet. I, I've been getting it delivered. It's so good to keep up with what's going on Wizarding World. Did you see that picture of Ron and his family a week ago? I bet he's learning loads. I'm really jealous. And the ancient Egyptian wizards were fascinating. There is some interesting local history of witchcraft here too. I I rewritten my whole history of magic essay to include some of the things I found out. I hope it's not too long. It's two rolls of parchment more than Professor Baynes asked for. Ron says he is going to be in London in the last week of the holidays. Can you make it? I will your aunt and uncle let you come? I really hope you can. If not, I'll see you at the Hogwarts Express on September the 1st. Love from Herman. P.S. Ron says, Persley head boy. I'll bet Persley is really pleased. Ron doesn't seem too happy about it. Harry laughed again as he put Herman's letter aside and picked up her present. It was very heavy. Knowing Herman he was sure about it was a big, large book full of very difficult spells. But it wasn't. His heart gave a huge bound as he ripped back the paper and saw a sleek black leather case with silver words stamped across it. Boomstick, servant, kit. Wow, Herman, Harry whispered. Wow, Herman, Harry whispered, unzipping the case to look inside. There was a large jar of Fleetwood's high finish handle polish, a pair of gleaming silver tail twig clippers, a tiny brass compass to clip onto your broom for long journeys, and a handbook of do-it-yourself broom care. Apart from his friends, the thing that Harry missed most about Hogwarts was Quidditch, the most popular sport in magical world. Highly dangerous, very exciting, and played on broomsticks. Harry happened to be a very good Quidditch player. He had been the youngest person in a century to be picked for one of most Hogwarts house teams. One of Harry's most prized possessions was his number 2000 racing broom. Harry put the leather case aside and picked up his last parcel. He recognized the untidy scrawl on the brown paper at once. This one was from Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper. He tore off the top layer of paper and glimpsed something green and leathery. But before he could unwrap it properly, the parcel gave a strange quiver, and whatever was inside it snapped loudly. as though it had jaws. Harry froze. Harry froze. Harry froze. He knew that Hagrid would never send him anything dangerous on purpose. But then, Hagrid didn't have a normal person's view of what was dangerous. Hagrid had been known to befriend giant spiders by Vixus, three-headed dogs from men in pubs and snakes in illegal dragon eggs into his cabin. Harry poked the parcel nervously. It snapped loudly again. Harry reached for the lamp on his bedside table, gripped it firmly in one hand, and raised it over his head, ready to strike. Then he sneezed the rest of the wrapping paper, one in his hand, and pulled, and out fell a book. Harry just had time to register its handsome green cover, emblazoned with the golden title, The Monster Book of Monsters. Before it flipped onto its edge and scuttled sideways along the bed like some weird crab. "Uh-oh!" Harry muttered. "Uh-oh! Uh-oh!" Harry muttered. The book toppled off the bed with a loud clunk and shuffled rapidly across the room. Harry followed it stealthily. The book was hiding in the dark space under his desk, praying that the Dursleys were still fast asleep. Harry got down on his hands and knees and reached down towards it. Ouch! The book snapped shut on his hand and then flapped past him. Still scuttling on his covers, Harry scrambled around, threw himself forward, and managed to flatten it. Uncle Vernon gave a loud, sleepy grunt in the room next door. Hedwig and Errol watched interestedly as Harry clamped the struggling book tightly in his arms, hurried to chest of drawers and pulled out a belt, which he buckled tightly around it. The monster book shuddered angrily, but could no longer flap and snap. So Harry threw it down on the bed and reached for Hagrid's card. Dear Harry, happy birthday. Think you might find this useful for next year. I won't say you more here. Tell you when I see you. Hope the smugglers are treating you right. All the best, Hagrid. It stuck as Harry as ornaments that Hagrid thought a big biting book would come in useful. But he put up Harry's car next to Ron and Herman's, grinning more boldly than ever. Now there was only the letter from Hogwarts left. Noticing that it was rather thicker than usual, Harry slit open the envelope, pulls out the first page of parchment with him and read. Dear Miss Potter, please note that the school next year will begin on September the 1st. The Hogwarts Express will leave from King's Cross Station, platform 9 and 3/4 at 11 o'clock. Third years are commencing to Village of the Homingses and its curtain weekends. Please give the enclosed permission form for your parent or guardian to sign. A list of books for next year is enclosed. Your Senior Professor Miss Google, Deputy Headmistress. Harry pulled out the handmade permission form and looked at it, no longer grinning. It would be wonderful to visit Hogsmeade at weekends. He knew it would entirely visit in village, and he had never set foot there. But how on earth was he going to proceed? Uncle Vernon on Pentana to sign the form. He looked at the alarm clock. It was now 2 o'clock in the morning. Deciding that he'd worry about the housemaid form when he'd wake up, Harry got back. Deciding that he'd worry about the housemaid form. Then he went up. Harry got back into the bed and reached up of the cross of another day on the chart, and he'd made for himself, counting down the days left until his return to Hogwarts. Then he took out of his glasses and lay down, eyes open, facing his 3 birthday cards. Extremely unusual though he was at the moment, Harry Potter felt just like everyone else, glad for the first time in his life that it was his birthday. Advertisement, 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 advertisement. Back to the video. Oh, chapter Chapter 2. Aunt Myrtle's big mistake. Okay, listen. So, I know what this whole title is about. I know the whole thing that's written here. I know everything. I know everything until the night bus comes. Okay, I know every single thing. It means that she signed the form, and then that's why it's big mistake, because he went and then he learned so many things, and then she said, no, why did I do it? And then she took the form. This is what it means. And then he threw the form in the dustbin. Yeah, that's what it means. And now, Harry went down to breakfast the next morning to find the 3 Durslys already sitting around the kitchen table. They were watching a brand new television. A welcome home for the summer present for Dudley. who had been complaining loudly about the long walk between the fridge and the television in the living room. Dudley had spent most of the summer in the kitchen. His piggy little eyes fixed on the screen and his 5 chins wobbling as he ate continuously. Harry sat down between Dudley and Uncle Vernon, a large buffet man with a little neck and a lot of mustache, far away from wishing Harry Potter a happy. Far from wishing Harry a happy birthday, none of the Dudleys gave any sign that they had noticed Harry enter the room. But Harry was too far to use the scare. He helped himself to a piece of toast and then looked up at the newsreader on the television, who was halfway through report and escaped comments. Next page. The public warned that Black is armed and extremely dangerous. A special hotline has been set up, and any slighting of Black should be reported immediately. No need to tell us he's no good, snored Uncle Vernon, staring over the top of his newspaper, looking at the prisoner. Look at the state of him, the filthy lidbutt. Look at his hair. He shot a nasty look sideways at Harry. Whose untidy hair had always been a source of great annoyance to Uncle Vernon. Compared to the man on the television, however, whose gaunt face was surrounded by a matted elbow-length tangle, Harry felt very groomed indeed. The newsreader had repeated, "The mystery of arguments and fridges was announced today." Hang on, barked Uncle Vernon, staring fiercely at the newsreader. "You didn't tell us where the mannequins escaped from." "Who uses that?" Luncan't. It would be coming up the street right now. "Aunt Paterna," who was bony and house-faced, whipped out and peered intently out of the kitchen window. Harry knew that Aunt Peter would simply love to call the hotline number. She was the noisiest woman in the world and spent most of her life spying on her boring, law-abiding neighbors. When will they learn?" said Uncle Vernon, pounding on the table with his large purple fist. "That hanging only the way that deal with these people." Sorry for the barrel. What is this thing? I don't understand, but there is something right over here. But this thing, I am seeing this thing. this thing, and this thing. Sorry about that. Let's just change it to 1.2. No, 1.3 is good. 1 point. It's a long time being sitting, man. I'm sitting for like 1 hour, man. Hey, yo, let me stand.